Welcome to Sense and Sustainability, your podcast channel for sustainable procurement. We hope you like what you hear. Please go to www.iso2400.org for more information, learning resources, tools, and much more.
Hello everybody, I'm Sean McCarthy, Director of Action Sustainability Community Interest Company, and we've been focusing over the last couple of weeks on India. By far the biggest traffic to our website, iso2400.org, is from India, and there seems to be a massive amount of interest in sustainable procurement in that country. India is a very important country, I think, for the future of the world. It's set to become the world's third largest economy in the not too distant future, with a massive investment needed in infrastructure. So I'm very pleased to introduce today Swapnil Dubey from India. Swapnil, welcome.
Hi, Sean.
And so would you like to tell us a bit about yourself, introduce yourself, a bit about your background and how you became involved in sustainability and procurement?
Sure. So I did my engineering way back in 1988, and then I was in the project management sector for around 12 years. Worked in large companies in the construction field and also in the EPC projects organizations. And since 2000, I moved into the service industry. I was with telecom companies, worked in different companies, large and medium-sized companies, rolling out 2G, 3G, 4G kind of telecom networks. And I also worked in a large multinational, India-based multinational organization where I was leading the global supply chain for Tata Communications, which is the B2B telecom provider. And we worked across 50 countries where we had our telecom networks and we were providing services to large corporates as well as mid-sized corporates. In 2019, I shifted to Yes Bank, which is in the BFSI sector. It was the fourth largest bank in India at that time, one of the large private sector banks. And we started facing huge amount of challenges in terms of some ethical issues which are found in the organization. The entire management changed. The government had to intervene, and then the bank was resurrected in 2020. At the same time, COVID hit us, and that was a double whammy for the organization. And then the bank changed a little bit in terms of its course of direction, the product portfolio. From a corporate sector lending focused bank, we also added retail into our portfolio in a big way. We already had retail presence, but then this became a core pillar for our business. So I was leading procurement at Yes Bank for 5 years and been involved in procurement contracting for almost 25 years now. Recently, I superannuated from Yes Bank, and I'm working as an independent consultant, working in the field of cost optimization, sustainability. Sustainable procurement is my core area. So this has been something which has been of interest to me for the last 4-5 years. As companies started to look at sustainability overall in the organization, the procurement piece, which is through the suppliers, which can make a huge amount of impact in the overall sustainability of the organization, got my attention, and I started to look at it very closely. And I worked within the organization and also worked outside. I am associated with Sustainable Procurement Pledge as the co-chair for India. We are hosting webinars trying to advocate all kinds of knowledge sessions across India. I am also associated with another non-profit organization for procurement. And with that organization, we did a one-day symposium on sustainable procurement along with Together for Sustainability, that's the TFS. And it was a huge success. We had to cut down on the amount of registrations. So the interest is huge. The requirement is huge. The companies want to embed the sustainability practices into the companies. So here I am trying to help people in whatever way I can.
So yeah, thanks very much for that introduction. So your experience spans many different sectors. I mean, you mentioned that you started off in construction, you've been in telecoms, technology, and then banking. And
Right.
When we met and discussed this podcast before we recorded, you were saying that really procurement is quite a transferable skill and process. Do you see much difference between the different sectors in the way that procurement is done?
See, at a high level, the procurement is procurement. Right? You need to buy something from outside. You need to engage with the suppliers. You need to build relationships and all this kind of thing. The moment you go deeper into procurement, it is pretty different. Right? The categories are different. The way you engage with suppliers are different. The kind of suppliers that you engage with are also very different. So let me give you an example. So So when I was in the construction industry, the most of the suppliers that we would deal with would be tier two, tier three kind of suppliers or local suppliers. We would typically buy the critical material ourselves directly from large organizations. And then we would have either a labor contractor or a contractor who would be $1 million organization, right? That would be a small kind of organization. The construction industry has since grown pretty large in India as well, but at that point of time, that was how the entire sector used to work. The amount of engagement with the suppliers and the relationship with the suppliers in the construction industry is still very different compared to when you deal with telecoms of the world. Because you're dealing with technology, right? You're dealing with the latest cutting edge products. You're dealing with latest cutting edge services. You are dealing with global partners. You're trying to establish something which is being tested as we roll out in the market, sometimes even for the first time. Sometimes we roll out products which are, we want to be the first in the market, and we tie up with vendors who are experimenting along with us. And there are startups and new generation entrepreneurs which are dealing with us. And similarly, in the banking industry, once again, it's a totally new domain now, right? A lot of fintechs coming up. Banks have their own set of restrictions in terms of how much you can do internally, what you can outsource, what you can deal to suppliers. There are a lot of regulations, a lot of regulatory interventions. There are a lot of restrictions in terms of how much of cloud you can use. A little bit relaxation is allowed to fintechs and the smaller organizations who do certain amount of activities, and they can enable the processes very differently, right? So where you in a telecom versus in a banking, a make or buy decisions will be very, very differently handled. And when you are dealing with those kind of suppliers in a telecom industry where you want to do everything kind of outsource, to a banking where you want to do everything kind of in-source, and only the indirect categories are typically given out to third party vendors. Things are changing now, but still a little bit slowly. But the methods of engagement, the types of discussion with the suppliers are very different in all the three kinds of environments.
So the actual process of procurement is similar, but depending on the sector that you're in and also the nature of the supply chain, the techniques are different, I guess. And certainly I'm deeply involved in various different ways in construction, have been for a long time. And that whole thing about, you end up with a supply chain of very small businesses at the bottom is very different to other sectors, such as telecoms, where often your technology, where you'd be dealing with some of your suppliers are actually very, very large companies.
Right.
How are you seeing sustainable procurement in India? What's the level of maturity, and what are the challenges in integrating sustainability requirements into the procurement process?
So one of the things which I have seen in about sustainability in India, one that the Indian government is committed towards sustainability. We have a top level goal of being net zero in 2070. Of course, it's a developing organization. The amount of investment that the government can make and what the government is expecting from the corporates to do in this sector is a little bit less. So the target is, I should say, around 40 years hence or 45 years hence. But it's a significant target for a company like India to have, first of all, right? And the second part is when the corporates are coming into picture, they are divided basically. One set of corporates are driven purely from a customer angle. Any company which is engaged in export market who are supplying to the European market or the American market or any kind of advanced geography, they are highly focused on sustainability because the customers are pushing them to do. There is another sector of set of companies where the internal management themselves are pretty mature. They have been focused on building trust in the community. So, for example, I was working in Tata Group for a very long time, and even before the customers started asking for sustainability, Tata's had their own philosophy in terms of how we want to contribute to the community and contribute to the nation. May not be as much on the climate side, but on all other diversity factors as well as on the inclusivity factors, etc. We had a lot of programs which are going on within the organization as well as outside the organization. So similarly, there were other large organizations which are internally focused on driving some aspects of sustainability. Then there is a third part of the ecosystem where the companies want to do something. So either they are not aware of what to do, how to do, or they don't have the funds to do this kind of thing. So I would bracket all of them in the same bucket because they are in the same situation where the sustainability is still at a nascent stage for them. They want to know more. They want to see how they can contribute, but something is lacking and something are limiting their progress in sustainability. The top of the pyramid, I think, are the ones where customer is focusing, customer is forcing them to be sustainable, and the companies are in the interest of business directly focusing on sustainability as part of their entire product portfolio as well as part of their entire ecosystem, and they're driving it deep across the entire chain, whether it is scope 1, scope 2, or scope 3, or looking at governance matters, looking at a company's gamut of E, S, and G. The internal focus organizations are picking and choosing on which ones are their important parameters and where they want to focus on and what they want to look at from an organization perspective, and go deep into those areas. Right? So it's a pretty diverse set. I have interacted with a lot of large companies as well as a lot of MSMEs, and I find that you can easily find out which particular bucket these companies fall into. And it is very much likely that the set one, which is driven by the customer, could be an MSME company, could be a small company, it could be less than $1 million turnover, but it's still highly focused on sustainability and vice versa.
So it seems that there's more driver from customers, particularly in the export market, potentially than government. Do you see much pressure from investors in India, or is it primarily customer driven?
So investors are definitely contributing, but it is the pressure is coming from the customers, and so investors in the form of, I would call board of directors also as part of the investors in some form. So if you see the external investors like bankers, like even Yes Bank has got a special lending mechanism for sustainable finance. Similarly, all large banks have got similar kind of a program where they offer benefits to the companies who are working in the sustainability area. And for sustainability driven projects, the investors are asking a lot of questions about sustainable practices in the organizations. But once again, I have not seen all the investors focusing on all the aspects of ESG. So they are focused on certain areas in certain organizations. Maybe they are looking at, let's say, if it's an IT sector, then they would look at only the people related, social related parameters a little bit more compared to anything else. And there would be a lot of questions around the practices and the policies in that particular organization. Recently, there was a case where a MD of a large organization said, you need to have minimum so many number of hours of working, and that related into huge loss of business for that organization. So the investors are there, investors are pushing for those kind of things, but the compliance is largely driven from two areas. One is the customer and one is from the government side.
One of the things that we do as a not-for-profit organisation is to promote the standard ISO 2400. Do you see much take-up of that standard in India?
Not much. People looking at the standard. People are one thing which I recently was speaking to Bureau Veritas, and I told them why is ISO taking so much time to make it a proper standard and just making an advisory kind of a thing. Why shouldn't they actually start mandating this as an ISO standard and getting it audited across the organizations? I don't know if the BV people were aware what is the real issue there. But I believe the companies which are mature, which want to get into sustainability and they want to walk that entire path, are definitely looking at the framework because it is very helpful. The way it is structured, the way ISO 20400 principles are laid out, and the entire guiding path for any company to go through that entire journey of implementing a proper ESG methodology in the organization. It is very helpful, and people are looking at it, but it is not very prevalent. Unlike you would talk about ISO 14000, ISO 45000. They are the ones which are talked about. Even when we talk about in the sustainability domain, people don't talk about ISO 20400 as much as some of other ISO standards.
Yes, it's an interesting point. I led the UK delegation in the development of ISO 2400, and there was quite a debate about certifiable or not certifiable standards. ISO 2400 came after ISO 26000, which is not a certifiable standard either. And our thinking was, well, actually, sustainable procurement is a journey. It's not about pass-fail. It's actually about enabling, if you do employ an independent organisation to come and look at what you do, to provide some advice on how to get to the next stage. And I usually find that in my experience, an audit is very much about how good you are at hiding the bad stuff and how good the auditor is at finding it. Whereas if it's not a pass-fail standard, you can actually have an open conversation with somebody that comes in to evaluate your organisation. So that was the view of the committee. I mean, obviously, things change and it may change in the future, but our view at the time was actually we think 2400 is a proper standard because it enables you to embark on a journey and to be honest about some of the challenges that you have. Whereas an auditable standard, 2400, what do? The auditor comes in every 2 years, you get the tick in the box, certificate on the wall, and then you carry on. But I think it's very interesting if I talk to people from the global south, particularly Africa, they want a certificate. And that's the most important thing. So it is a cultural issue that we need to face. So yeah, very interesting your thoughts coming from India on what we can do. Obviously, as you say, the standard itself is a strategic framework that anybody can use to implement sustainable procurement. So hopefully, with this series on India, we can get a few more people interested. Do you have examples of good practice, things that have been done in your part of the world in sustainable procurement that our listeners can learn from?
Yeah, so I was talking to a very large EPC company recently, and so by the way, I didn't touch upon the government regulations, which is the business responsibility and sustainability reporting, business reporting and sustainability reporting, BRSR, which has become mandatory since last 3 years, and the value chain is also getting included into the reporting as we go along. So I was talking to this large EPC organization and how they are practicing sustainability in their entire value chain, particularly on the value chain side. And since it's a large organization, they can afford all the big supporting partners like DNB. They are using BV, they are using SGS, they are using all these large organizations to look at their tier one suppliers. They are doing activities around sustainable risk assessment and then identifying the suppliers who are supposed to be part of this journey along with them in terms of value chain partners. And they're also doing assessment of those suppliers by two third parties to find out how much amount of reporting is being done correctly or it is in aligned with the principles that they talk about, right? But still they are scratching the surface. Right? While they are able to cater to maybe 30% of their total spend by value, in terms of suppliers, they are still talking of less than 10%. So even very large organizations, and it's a topmost EPC organization in the country. I think. We talk about Tata Group is the largest group in the country at this point of time. Maybe it's a debatable thing. So between Tata's and Reliance, they are the two largest groups. They do a lot of work on sustainability in India. They have the detailed assessment of suppliers. They got engagement with suppliers. But once again, when it comes to suppliers, there is a lot of tail, and there is a lot of people are able to focus only on the tier one kind of suppliers, either by materiality or by spend value. They are still not able to go to tier two, tier three, or even go to the next level. So go to tier two of tier one supplier. Even that is a difficult thing for most of the organizations. The chemical companies I have seen are taking a lead in this thing, and they are doing a lot more differently. They are going deeper down in the value chain. They are not only stopping at their tier one suppliers, they are going to tier two suppliers also. And they are talking to the sub suppliers, they're talking to and in some elements, they are talking right up to the source of origin of the components that are coming into the product. So pharma, chemical are, I think, by far the leaders in India in this segment. The larger companies are taking their steps in terms of trying to do as much as they can, particularly on the impact side, trying to see where the maximum impact they can create and focus on the key suppliers.
So yeah, it's very challenging going down below tier one in all parts of the world down to the multiple tiers of the supply chain. Is it just about carbon or are other aspects of sustainability, I'm thinking particularly the social economic side of sustainability, is that something that's being considered in India?
Yeah. People are looking at all aspects. Carbon is the most talked about, and climate change, which is there for everybody to see every day. So May is one of the hottest months in Mumbai. But last few days we are seeing rains over here in Mumbai in the month of May, and even today it's a cloudy weather outside. And the kind of climate changes that we are seeing right now, they're all getting attributed only to carbon. Carbon is not the only villain, as we all know that. Right? So The carbon is the most talked about. It is the most easily identifiable problem statement at this point of time for everybody. And most of the people who are not deep into sustainability think ESG or sustainability is about carbon. It's not about all the aspects. But yes, people do focus on a lot of areas. They talk about governance. They talk about social areas. India as a country, in certain sectors, social is a problem. You will never be able to achieve social parameters for some more years to come. India is a developing country, and we have to understand that. Right? But in larger organizations, the awareness about all these parameters, the social parameters, the even contractual clauses, even ensuring the compliance in the corporate, in the public sector, or in the private sector itself, has been pretty stringent on the social parameters and the other parameters also. So there is definitely a lot of effort on all the parameters of ESG. Carbon is and will remain the top priority for most of the things, because when people don't understand the ESG fully, the first topic is carbon. Start with carbon.
Absolutely. You mentioned obviously India as a developing country and some of the challenges. So what are the biggest challenges to implementing sustainable procurement in your view?
So one, as I mentioned, there are a lot of mid-sized organizations and small-sized organizations in the country. The country is growing, the economy is growing, the companies are growing larger, but there are still a lot means I'm talking millions of mid-sized organizations in the country who can't really have dedicated sustainability support. And reaching out to those people, making them aware about sustainability, building sustainability practices in those kind of organizations is a humongous task, and it's an effort by itself, right? So when we talk about this large EPC organization, we talked about Tata Group and we talked about Reliance Group. They are also taking actions in terms of creating awareness among these mid-sized vendors. They are hiring third-party consultants to conduct awareness sessions, helping them, guiding them in terms of what kind of practices should be followed, how to create simple kind of policies, let's say posh policy for that particular organization. Right? So how do you go about doing it, and how do you not only create a policy, but how do you also implement that particular policy? So there are these large organizations who are trying to, on their own, make efforts to educate these mid-sized organizations. There are a lot of mid-sized organizations who are committed to it, but there are a lot of them who are not even committed to it. So they do lip service. They think that this is an overhead to their business. This is coming at a cost to their business, which will lead to lack of profitability or challenges. So I think one of the biggest challenge right now is having the awareness about sustainability across the board. And being a low cost economy, you really can't avoid certain things which increases cost in a significant way. Right? You can't reduce plastic beyond a point. Right? You have to. It will take time. It will reach a stage where people will be able to not only afford it, but also be able to consciously adopt it by their own self, rather than getting pushed from a cost angle or from some other.
So it's knowledge and awareness, obviously, of the scale of a country the size of India, is not surprising that you see that as the biggest challenge. Okay, Swapnil, I think we've covered a lot of topics here. Is there anything else that you would like to add before we close?
I think 2 points which are very important, and I touched upon both these points in some form. One is whatever we can do in terms of creating more and more awareness about sustainability, not only about climate change, not only about carbon, and having a full-fledged understanding of what ESG actually means and how it can impact their business, and how that is the way going forward for conducting business. And that is something which is going to be all the more important in the times to come. All sorts of organizations, government organizations, public sector, private sector, non-profit organizations like us, we all have to make our part, do our part, and try to reach out to people. Second is, I like the ISO 20400 framework a lot, even if they are not making it certifiable ISO standard. I think they can do a little bit more about making people aware about ISO 20400, create sessions, create learning content around it, so that people can use that methodology. Many people don't know how to start. Right? They know they want to get into it. They simply pick up the challenge area which the somebody else is forcing upon them, and they work only on that area, and that's enough for them. That is not good enough. Right? And that is, if you have a proper structured mechanism, awareness about the structured mechanism to go about is going to lead to a much better and a robust sustainability program across the organization. So in whatever form we can promote more and more about the principles of ISO 20000, bring it down to the mid-sized organizations who are not very, I would say, adept at understanding these kind of concepts. Bring it down to them to in their language, make it easy for them to understand, make it easy for them to implement, take smaller steps to reach up to a bigger goal. That would definitely help in everything.
Yes, thank you. I mean, obviously that's something we try to do, but we're a very small not-for-profit organisation based in the UK, but we are trying to raise awareness. We do have a simple self-assessment on our website where anybody can go on and ask themselves 20 questions. That gives you some idea of the level of maturity that you have against the standard, because the standard is 50 odd pages. It's quite a complex thing, so I certainly fully understand the need to make it as simple as we can, and we're trying to do that. And obviously with this series of events that we have around India, hopefully we'll help to do that. So thank you very much for your insights, Swapnil, on sustainable procurement in India. We do have another event, recorded webinar, which gives us a more public sector focus. But I think your perspective from the private sector gives us a really good balance, and hopefully helps people to understand the situation in India better. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for giving this opportunity.
Thank you for listening to our podcast on Sense and Sustainability. Please listen out for more episodes. For more information, learning resources, tools, and much more content on sustainable procurement, go to www.iso2400.org.